Welcome, everybody, to episode 4, season 2 of Fights Clean, Sex Dirty TV. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Gabrielle Sundra, and our awesome guests, Brian Franklin and Jennifer Russell.
Hi there.
Well, we're not quite together this time. I wish I was. These two look so cozy and cute there. And before we started, they had a little kiss. This is our first episode, honey, that we've done in different places. So I'm certainly starting off wishing I was there with you, but happy to be here on the show. Yeah. And delighted to have Brian and Jennifer join us. You know, if you watched last season, you may have seen that Brian and Jennifer came and spoke, and it was a great talk, and they do great even on how to keep the fights clean, but we really wanted to bring them back for how to keep the sex dirty, because they are one hot couple, and they have a ripple effect of hotness happening, so it's just a delight to have them back for this topic.
They sure are, and look at how amazing they're looking today. Thank you for being with us on our show today. So, as you might know in our viewing audience, we organize our content according to the two distinctions, how to keep the fights clean and how to keep the sex dirty. And we alternate each week, going back and forth between how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And we look at these different time frames of those two elements of being in relationship. We look at before, as it starts, during, and after. Gabby, you want to?
Yeah, because it's really important. You know, when I started looking at relationship work, a lot of it is so theoretical, and they'll tell you like what not to do. For example, don't complain and criticize. Well, great, but complaining and criticizing is pretty natural. What do I actually do instead? And then when I started writing down all these tips and suggestions on what to do instead, I realized it's when do you apply them? Because what you're going to do in the heat of an argument or in the middle of hot sex is not the same thing you're going to do in the before or as it starts or after. So we categorize the content this way so that you can focus on the topics that are most important to you and apply them at exactly the time that's important to you.
Beautiful. And today our focus is on how to keep the sex dirty as it starts. And we are so fortunate to have our guests, Brian and Jennifer, here. They love this topic, and they can't wait to talk about it, and we can't wait to hear what they have to say.
Raj, I just want to make one reminder to those that are on this Hangout that at about halfway through, about 25, 30 minutes to the end, that you'll make it live so that they can ask their questions either in chat or on video. And they may have to refresh their page, and we'll remind them about that when it goes live, but just let you know that that's coming up.
Beautiful. And before we go live, where you could join the Google Hangout, you can comment on the web page itself. If you go to relationshipfunandgames.com /FightsCleanSexDirtyTV and go to the live episode there's a comment window right underneath the video player. And you can ask questions, you can comment, jump right into the conversation. We'd love to hear from you.
You can flirt.
Yeah. Oh, and Raj, one last thing I didn't mention is that you mentioned this is the season 2, but season 2 is the season of peace. So I just want to remind people of that. You know, yes, we're talking about sex today, but for these next couple of months, we're really focusing on keeping the peace in relationships. It's the holidays. It's stressful. People can argue about all sorts of things. You know, there's additional stresses going on. So as you're talking about sex and keeping the sex dirty today, remember that this is also under the umbrella of the season of peace, which I can promise you when Raj and I are having more sex, there's a lot more peace. The passion creates peace, and the peace even can create passion.
Beautiful. And Gabby, why don't you tell a little bit about our special guests, Brian and Jennifer, today, and I'll bring up their bio.
Absolutely. Well, Brian and Jennifer, sorry, there's someone moving a chair upstairs. I'm in a mastermind. I don't know if you can hear that, but sorry if that's a disruption. But Brian and Jennifer have been experts in many fields. A lot of them apply to business, but Raj and I got to be in a year-long mastermind with them that, you know, we learned a lot about business, but we had one of the top, I'd say top 5 breakthroughs of our marriage in that workshop. So they're masterful at blending personal development and professional development. They are masters at scaling. I think, Brian, you and Jennifer, you've taken 7 companies to the $1 billion mark or higher. Is that right?
Sure.
Yep, 7 companies. So they have a strong track record speaking with thousands of people. They just got back from Awesomeness Fest. They travel all over the world contributing to people both in their companies and in their relationship. And I've never seen anybody do it so interwoven. They are the least compartmentalized people I've ever met. So what that means to me is full authenticity. And so you match their authenticity and their brilliance and some fun, and they're just great people to learn from. So, and great people in general. Happy to have you guys here.
Oh, we are thrilled to be here on such a juicy topic. It's not often that we get to be in public, no less, talking about sex, which is great, which is something that we've been really proud of how hot our relationship has been, and we've been together 8 years, and I still feel like we're in our honeymoon, and I don't see any end in sight. So I'm thrilled to be here, and you guys have been just incredible on this topic of relationships. I just can't imagine being with 2 better people. You guys have been inspiring to us over and over again on the topics of keeping our fights clean. So you know, best thing we could do is give back on keeping the sex dirty. We'll trade.
Yeah.
And I love being here for this topic because I think you know, the general conventional wisdom is that the same dynamics that keep the fights clean would apply to keeping a healthy sexual dynamic, and they almost all do the opposite. You know, if you just port over the fights clean technology to the bedroom or to your sex life, then you're likely to have less and less polarity, less and less charge, less and less hotness. So you know, learning how to have both the sort of coming together and cooperative energy in the fights clean, and also that polar opposing, so you can create some tension in the in the sexual domain, and having those gracefully flow between the two rather than erode the two is something I'm super happy to be here to do. And like you said, you know, we haven't had a chance to talk about it in public very much. We have on one occasion had a chance to have sex in public. That was well, it depends on what you mean by public, I suppose. But one was certainly very public, and but I'm glad to hear that we can speak about it now in public. To try to into the magic behind the curtain.
So Raj, Brian and Jennifer, they have so many great tips that we want to dive in and really give them the full show, so to speak. But I just wanted to point to one tool or distinction that we've been focusing on this week of this week's blog. Before we do that, do you have the slide there, or am I jumping the gun on the slide?
No, I totally have it. Yeah. So let's briefly talk about our 2 distinctions. Focus a little bit more on the setting the stage, and then just talk briefly about show not tell, and then we'll jump into Brian and Jennifer's topics.
Well, show not tell. I don't want to say too much because that was the focus of this particular episode last time. So, but I will briefly let you know. Show not tell. You know, Raj used to say to me, "Let's have sex." And I like the idea, but I'd say to him, let's have sex is not a seduction. So I'd say, show me, don't tell me. But if you want to know more about show not tell, go ahead and you can look at the blog on the website, or go back to the episode library and look at episode 4 for last season. But this season, we were looking at the distinction, or the tool, or the tip, whatever you want to call it, the trick, the relationship hack, is about set and setting. And when I started thinking about, and I started writing about this one, I actually just searched set and setting. I'm like, where do I know that term from? I'm like, is that a literary term? And it came up on Wikipedia with psychedelics and the importance of set and setting with psychedelics. So I wrote this week on the how psychedelics and sex are similar, because all of these recommendations for set and setting about how important it is, you know, and that's not just an external setting the stage, you know, for what things look like, but also what does that look like for internally? What is your mood that you're bringing to the table?
We sometimes would say that, because the way we might think of it for sex would be creating a container, almost the way that a combustion engine has walls and container for fire. the stronger the container and the more appropriate, the hotter the fire that can be inside without kind of spilling out into your life and causing damage. So set and setting can be, for both of the applications you mentioned, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, one of the headings on the blog was failure to prepare. When you didn't say leaky energy, but holding that container. But I like that metaphor, especially because it's got fire. I'm actually imagining, a big metal ball bursting with hot lava. Not bursting, being holding this hot lava. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we encourage, because of course we always like to include an action option because there's great ideas, but what really is important is what are you going to do about it. Raj, before I get to those questions, and I know we're doing this one pretty quickly, is there anything you want to say about set and setting? Because you are ambiance man. I mean, you set that up well.
Yeah, so just a couple of things to point out briefly. I really like the distinction between mental state and the environment, the physical environment. We often don't distinguish those two things, and we only consider the environment when we think of setting. I certainly did, and I have a particular knack for creating settings. I have a nickname of Ambiance Man, so I really enjoy creating the setting. Just a couple of tips for the guys out there and also the women. Depending on whether you're trying to create a secure, like Brian was referring to this container, that he wasn't necessarily saying secure, but one way to create a really potent environment for a real free sexual exploration is just making sure the perimeter is set, quote unquote perimeter is set. That can be anything from drawing the blinds to making sure the doors are closed to, if you have kids or other people living in your home, that's handled so that you are fully able to pay attention to your partner and not be distracted or interrupted in the middle of your lovemaking. Just a handful of fun little tips and tricks. Get a bag of tea light candles and have them handy. Also get one of those long stick lighter things so that you can easily light your candles and not burn your fingers.
Raj's tools of choice here.
Yeah, it's a critical element. Also get those little votives, those little holders for the candles so that you can actually put the candle in, and sometimes they have those cool patterns on them so you can really create some ambiance there. And work on your lighting. You may be totally oblivious to the lighting, and you may have two modes, on or off. There's a lot of variation there that you can do, either off with candles or dimly lit with candles. You can even put sort of translucent cloth over the lighting to create your own special lighting there. Scents are awesome. Gabby, in your blog, you were talking about the different things that you might want your partner to experience.
Well, I'd phrased it like questions, because for everyone it's going to be different. Like most people will like candlelight, so that's a good baseline. But especially if you're looking about the internal and the external. So, my questions were more like, well, what's your mood right now? What's the mood you're bringing to the environment? Just to question that. Are you stressed? Are you distracted? Is this a release? Are you present? Are you excited? And then ask yourself, what's the mood of your partner? Are they worried or stressed? One of the ways to set the perimeters, if you know that they're worried about something, to say something comforting and say, we're going to work that out. You don't worry about it, or whatever it may be. But check in with their mood. Are they feeling vulnerable or sensitive? That's going to have a big impact on how you're interacting intimately in bed. Where are you going to physically be? Raj, that's your drapes that you talked about, closing the blinds. Impact of time of day is another element, and interestingly enough, if you look at the biological factors, from when a man's peak time is for sex and a woman's peak time is for sex, man's in the morning, woman's at night, the peak overlap time of at least chemically speaking, is 4 p.m. So I'm a big advocate of the afternoon delight, but you may want to factor that in. It's not always possible for everyone. Raj and I do live at home, maybe it's a weekend thing. But factor in the time. Are they going to be exhausted? If we wait too late, in the night when I'm ready, when I go to bed, then Raj is too tired. Or if Raj tries to wake me up too early, then I'm tired. So check in with that element.
I know that each time midnight and midnight and day, that's generally it's just for 20, and then the following day after that, and so on.
Could you say that again, Brian? We were getting a little bit of an
just a little bit there.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying that my peak time, I think, is between midnight and midnight the next day.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Anywhere there's time or space.
Well, it's funny you should say anywhere there's time, because when we had Adam Galad and his wife Sandy on, they gave us this term that we just love. It's called emergency sex. And so that's when, like, there's not a lot of time, but somebody's really in the mood, and he's like, you got to take advantage of these moments, emergency sex. And it's an interesting after effect of this show is I tend to start thinking of our interviewees when I'm having sex now. Because like Susan Bratton, she talked about you can stretch an orgasm like taffy. So when I'm having an orgasm, I'm thinking of stretching it like taffy. Or Adam and Sandy were talking about emergency sex, and Raj and I were going to leave to go for a brunch. And we're like, well, let's do it just beforehand. Oh, yes, we have the urge. There's emergency sex.
And then
we're having hot guests.
Right.
Yeah, and in that moment, Adam Galad and Sandy popped into our minds briefly. So thanks, guys, for that. All right.
Raj, just a couple other questions of other elements, because we talked about one, and then I'll just mention these questions, and then we can dive into the dirty sex advice that Brian and Jennifer have for us. But keep in mind what they're going to see. Like, is the room cluttered? Are they going to see something that's going to distract them? Smells, Raj mentioned aromatherapy. You know, is it smell or does it smell nice? It doesn't take a lot to have something, you know, could be in the candles. Tasting, maybe they're going to be thirsty, or you're going to need a drink of water or some grapes. You know, the more senses that you involve, the better. So just consider that. And what about sounds? It might be music, or maybe you're distracted by other sounds outside. Like our bedroom is kind of close to our neighbors. So, you know, I like to have music on or something, not because, I just don't want the whole neighborhood hearing me. I want a little bit more freedom. And then just, how are they going to feel? Temperature is a huge one. I read something interesting recently about the impact of wearing socks on orgasms, that wearing socks actually increases the intensity and and how orgasmic you are. It's like, okay, go figure. So socks and naked body isn't so sexy, so maybe just turn the temperature up a bit. But those are the questions that I wanted people to ask themselves. And just one last thing about seduction in general is, Brian, I think you and I talked about this, that you once said, once you get married, you think the seduction is over. Right. You're like, God, I get, free sex anytime.
On lockdown, baby. Yeah, totally.
But that's not the case. In fact, you have to up your game with seduction. So I just wanted to plant that seed, that it's not that it should get easier. It's actually that it gets more challenging. So we have to, as I said in the blog, like Emerald, take a lesson from the chef Emerald. You're like, bam, let's kick it up a notch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Seduction, if you're seducing someone who you have natural new relationship chemistry with and they don't know you very well, tricks will work. But, with your wife or your husband, they smell your tricks a million miles away. They're not going to work. You have to bring the real stuff. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for letting us share that. I'd like to turn this over to you. And Raj, I think you put together a couple of slides as well on their content. I'm not sure when they want to bring those up. You can do that, but I'm a visual person, so I do appreciate you making those slides.
Yeah, just briefly before we jump into that, Gabby, we just point out the action option. You don't need to go through all the steps. We'll post these steps in the comment window on this TV show page, and we'll also put the link to the blog article in the comment window. So,
yeah, as I mentioned, it's an action option. It's kind of like Mission Impossible. You're like, your action option should you choose to accept it. But I don't want people just to leave inspired like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So we like to ground everything with what's one action you can take afterwards. So, yeah, we'll copy that into the comments and encourage you to take a look at those and get into action.
Awesome. So excited to hear from Brian and Jennifer on their awesome hacks, tricks on how to keep the sex dirty as it starts. And just let me know if you want me when to queue up a slide, Jennifer, and I'll do that for you.
Got it. You got it. Well, I think the first thing that we want to talk about today is really the art of seduction itself. And to me, if there's an energy of seduction, it's like creating a gravity well around you. It's like there's a pull where, with a look, the person across from you wants to occupy exactly the same space you're in, right? And so I like to play with how do you create that kind of energy where your partner can't even stand to be more than, a millimeter away from you. And this kind of art of seduction for me is all about really feeling into the sexual tension that's between you. And what I notice is that, there's like an optimal, if we're going to use geography for a minute, there's an optimal distance between you and your partner, or you and any person that you're with, where if you're too far outside of the zone, there's not a lot of energy and you could just walk away. And if you're too far inside the zone, it's like collapsing the energy. And in that moment, it's like, the guy's like kind of mauling you, right, at that point. If you're the woman, he's definitely collapsed the energy if he's kind of moving in too quickly. But if you learn the art of seduction, if you learn that creative tension, that sexual tension where you put yourself right where the energy is the hottest, right where physically you're feeling it the most, so that any movement outside of that feels painful, and every fiber of your being just can't wait to cross that distance, and then you hold it. You stay there. Now that, to me, that nuance, that feeling into that sexual tension, to me, is where the art of seduction begins, where the hotness around sex begins. And I think you first have to be aware of where the sexual tension is between you. I think for a lot of people, they're not paying attention. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that kind of crosses your personal space and you're kind of moving back. This is very unsexy when what you want to do is kind of move away. Like and it's pretty unsexy when you're like trying to move towards someone and they just keep kind of backing up and walking away. And they're breaking the tension. And so for me, it's about really understanding where is that ideal sexual tension, and then rather than collapsing it or running away, dancing with it, staying at exactly the right distance and feeling it. And so that's one of the things that I like to play with people, is I have them literally get across from each other and feel exactly where that tension is, and then play there. Yeah.
The analogy that comes to my mind is that of music. So if you're a musician, you'll know this well. Even if you're not a musician, though, if you listen to some of your favorite music and listen to the way that the music indicates what's going to come, makes you want it, and then like pauses there for a minute. It just keeps making you want it, and then it satisfies you. Yeah. So especially right at the beginning, I've been sitting here, I've been wanting to kiss Jennifer's shoulders, one of the sexiest parts on my sexy wife's body. Right here, it just drives me crazy. So I've been wanting to kiss it since the interview began. And instead of like just going in and kind of satisfying what I would want to do, that would release all the tension. What can I do to increase the tension? So I'm just touching her really lightly, just so that I'm kind of waiting for her to come a little bit towards me, and until touching it more or coming closer would actually increase the tension. And I don't move in until moving in would increase the sensation or the tension. If I start to move in and start to decrease, then I'll pause and wait for her to catch up, or maybe even pull back and wait for her to see whether she comes towards me a little bit. Yeah, so like that. So at the beginning in particular, it's so important, so that by the time you're out of just as it begins and into the actual happening phase, then you're just sort of an elongated release of tension that can last however long you want that to.
The longer you can play with that tension, the hotter the sex gets, right? I mean, we could create a whole interlude with just my shoulder and his hand, and by the time we get to the sex, if we get there, I'm wanting it so bad, I just can't even stand it, and so is he. And that's what creates great sex. I mean, too often I think we rush to getting to it, getting to the kind of coup de grace, getting to the penetration of the moment. And I would just encourage everybody listening to play with the tension as long as you can stand it until you can't stand it any longer. So that every sexual encounter, you're literally just right at the edge of your seat wanting to occupy the space that your partner is in. And that, to me, is really juicy sex, and the kind that, him and I can write storybook tales of in our...
Gabby, you come home now.
I wanted to list some ways that you could,
Yeah.
common ways that people break the tension. So Jennifer already mentioned rushing in. She already mentioned backing away. There's also laughing. Laughter is a tension breaker. It's what happens when you have a conflict in your body that you can't resolve, and so it comes out as an involuntary laughter.
It's like that little nervous laughter.
Right.
You can't quite take the person's gaze. They're flirting, their energy. It's just a little too much, and laughter is one of those dissipations of that energy. Looking away, breaking eye contact. If someone's really intently gazing, and you blink a lot, or you move your face, or you can't make eye contact, that's another way that we actually cut the tension off.
Any kind of fidgeting,
yeah.
If you suddenly feel the urge to smooth out the wrinkles in the sheets, or you're kind of doing seduction, maybe something goes a little bit, and then you're like, I get some lint on there. Especially if you've been married a while, if you've been together for a while, you can transition from sex to laundry incredibly fast, or from sex into business talk. You guys work together. It's like, oh, you're so sexy. God, your shoulder looks amazing in this black dress. Was this the dress that you wore on stage? All of that comes from internally there being a sensation of that tension, which is uncomfortable. And so hot sex comes from being comfortable with that uncomfortable sensation and just letting it brew.
Nice. Love that.
Maybe you could show the slide at this point, I think.
Yeah, that's our first one.
Okay.
It hasn't been changing. It's mostly been on you, so I don't know if anyone has seen our faces yet. But...
No.
Is it changing?
It does. It's just not for us.
Oh, not for us.
We're on a different link as presenters than other people. Yeah. But I really love that with the polarity. While Raj is pulling up that slide, Alex Allman was on this video, this topic last time, and I was on a plane coming back from our trip to France where we were with you, and so I wasn't on that one. And when I came home the next day, it was the hottest sex Raj and I had ever had, and it was an energy thing. It wasn't a technical thing. Yeah. And I went back and looked at what Alex was talking about, and he was talking about just you'd never want to have two people being dominant at the same time or two people being surrendered at the same time. And so it was the male's role to be reading his woman. This could be non-gender specific, masculine or feminine, but to be reading his partner so that if they were being directive, like I don't like that or I want this, that they would be responsive. And if there was neutral, then they would be directive. And if the partner was surrendered, they'd be directive. But they were constantly changing that energy to make sure that they were never doing exactly what you were describing.
Absolutely, I'm in full agreement that it's the polarity that adds the spice, right? It's not us when we're the most alike. It's us when there's an energy, just like electricity, the positive and negative charge, they get attracted to one another, right? And we're talking about creating the same thing and holding that sensation as long as possible, savoring it, loving it, holding it, realizing that it'll all work out. You don't need to get all the way to the end just yet. Sit there with us. Sit there in it.
Anticipation. Remember that song?
Yeah.
Anticipation, right? Makes it even sweeter.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can sit there in front of your partner and play with it and like use distance at first, right? I mean, we just use touching the shoulder, but you could literally sit across from each other and start like 5 feet apart. And then get a little bit closer, and then get a little bit closer, and get a little bit closer, and let one of the two partners say, okay, now we've gone too far, or now here's where I feel the most energy. And you guys can play with understanding your kind of kenosphere, the feeling field all around you, to feel where it is that energy is. Now, it's going to change from day to day and from time to time, but the key to an exercise like that is just even getting in touch with something that for many people is subtle.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even clued in that, oh, I just crossed across this energetic boundary where I'm collapsing all of our polarity and tension, and I didn't even realize it. Well, if you start to play with it in that way, you're going to be a master at this. A master at being magnetic,
And I like that. I love alliterations. Master being magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
Just to grossly generalize, if you're a man, slow down.
Right.
Move in more slowly. One time with Jennifer, as we began to have sex, it took me about 45 minutes to get her boot off, her left boot, and I had my hold of the zipper, and I was just tugging at the zipper, not really pulling it down, but tugging at it just so that it, just at that moment, slipped over one of those rivet, like to the next notch. And each time it would switch to the next notch, her whole body would shake. It was on like this pre-orgasmic shuddering. She could feel all of the energy and connection, and I just enjoyed every single one. And that was the right speed for that interaction. It wouldn't be necessarily very handy for emergency sex, but it would, and that for that one interaction, that was the right speed. So for most men, just slow down.
Slowing down is key. Yeah.
And if you're a woman, I would say, odds are that stay in your body. The advice would be not to vacate and go think about something else, or but to have your sensation, put all of your attention on where you're being touched, and feel what it's feeling like to be touched, and really stay with what's happening. Because I think a lot of just like a lot of men are moving too fast, a lot of women race ahead in their mind. Like, oh, he's touching my leg, that means he wants to have sex, and how what time, and you're like fast forwarding instead of actually feeling what's happening on your leg right now.
Mm-hmm.
So just go back to what's actually happening, not what you think is about to happen. And I think for women, I think that's mostly to generalize, that's the best, the correlate to the advice for men, that you should be slowing down.
Mm-hmm. That's great overall advice. You were talking earlier before we started the call on your +1. You want to share about that one? I love equations. I think it was Chip Connolly who actually wrote a book on, I think it was called Emotional Equations. So when you take these big concepts and get them down into these simple equations, it makes them memorable and therefore more accessible. So I was really intrigued when Raj was putting that on the slide. I'm like, ooh, what's that one?
That one, yeah.
Yeah, just one moment before we jump into that. We're going to delay making the Google Hangout button live by 10 minutes, if up to 10 minutes, just so we can get some more of this juicy content from Brian and Jennifer. Is really awesome. And as Gabby was mentioning, one of the things that we love about this show is that it totally creates nonlinear jumps in our sex life. And if you're anything like us, you'll probably want to get it on with your partner as soon as the show is over. And check out the comments window. I'm adding in comments of the key points that Brian and Jennifer.
Right?
Wednesday is something.
Well, if any of the four of us can inspire some hot sex after this, then we know we've done it right. So I'm hoping that's what's happening. Let's talk about +1. So that's kind of another distinction that Brian and I wanted to share with you guys. When you're interacting with your partner or with anyone, my kind of rule of thumb, if I'm wanting to feel more desire, more hotness, more turn on, is to +1 every interaction. And what +1 means is there's a certain amount of energy in an interaction. Maybe I'm at the coffee shop and the coffee barista is taking my order. If I were going to +1 the energy between me and the barista, I might just more warmly smile, right? Give him just a little bit more energy than I'm receiving. Not +10, not +3, but +1 of what I'm receiving. So I'm not going to jump across the counter and maul the barista.
Depending on what he might look like. Or depending on what's giving you, I guess.
Right, which wouldn't be appropriate, but what would be appropriate and not at all in any violation of any relationship would be for me to just add just +1 the amount of energy I'm getting back, right? And the idea is that if you're in a practice where you're +1ing all of the energy that you're receiving, especially with your partner, but I really recommend doing this with everyone all day long. If you'll just add just a little more than you're getting, and then they have the opportunity to receive a little bit more energy, just enough for them to kind of go, oh, wow, that's a beautiful woman that just smiled at me that I'm taking her order. And they'll give you a little bit of lightness, and then you can +1 that. And you can see if you're doing that with your partner, every little +1, adds a little bit more energy. Mm-hmm. So I'm not staying neutral, and as a woman, I'm actually opening, I'm actually adding, and if he's +1ing me, he's not giving me a 10, he's giving me just a little bit more than I'm giving him. And then we give each other a little bit more. And that stepwise, that +1, is what allows people to safely onboard into a deeper and deeper connection and a more sensual or sexual expression in a way that anything more than a +1 can kind of scare somebody off or close somebody down. And in the equation, I don't know if you want to talk about the bullet point we have underneath that.
Well, the sex is one of the only contexts in which +1 is greater than +10.
Yeah.
Because it actually +10 will flood it out and break that tension. But I read a book on. I wish I could remember the title now, but I'm just going to quote its content without attributing because I can't remember which book this came from. But it observed, it was a psychologist who had done many couples therapy sessions around sexuality, and he observed that there was always one of the people in the couple that controlled the sexual dynamic, and it was always the one that wanted sex less than the other. So in every couple, someone wants sex more than the other more often, and whoever wants it less becomes the control partner that actually controls the sexual dynamic. That's just, and then there's a bunch of unhealthy ways that control partners and non-control partners tend to get into patterning about, like, begging or wanting for more, diminishing yourself, or trying to overbear. And so in the domain of +1, the control partner, your tendency, if you're the control partner where you want it less, your tendency is going to just be to just wait until you're inspired or be neutral. Mm-hmm. And you think that being turned on is something that sort of happens to you, and you're waiting for your partner to do the thing that turns you on. And then when you notice you're turned on, then you're ready for sex. And what this instruction, what the +1 is saying to do, is to actually push into and lean into sex and sexuality, not just only with your partner, but all the time. Because a +1 from the barista, if they're just taking your order, isn't going to be very sexy. It's going to be barely even flirting. But it's just going to be putting a little bit of your sexuality present into that moment, which has that turn-on be flowing through your body. So when you are with your partner, it's all on tap.
It's all flowing. It's on tap.
Because you're pushing that through, not passively waiting for sexual energy to happen to you. Now, if you're not the control partner, if you tend to want it more often, then your tendency is going to be to feel how much you want it and just push that energy of your desire onto your partner. Mm-hmm. Look at what Jennifer's doing, which is like the +10, which is not greater than +1, but less. So your task as the non-control partner is to feel all of the desire going on in you. Separately feel the relative neutrality in your partner, and just meter out. Give her or him a little bit. That enough for them to follow and +1 it, and reward each time they +1 with another gentle +1. And those +1s for the control partner feel so relaxing and opening and inviting, where the +10 feels like obligation, agenda, and invasion of space.
And after a day where I've allowed myself to add energy in every interaction, regardless of who they were, men, women, people that I was working with, just adding that energy, at the end of a day like that, I'm all the way open. I'm aware of my sexual beingness. I'm full of energy. I'm full of life. And then it's easy for me to meet my partner and +1 him, and then for us to engage. And so I've often given this advice to women who come to me and say, gosh, I'm just not feeling very turned on, or gosh, I'm really just not getting very much sexual attention from men. Well, one of the best ways to do that is to not just +1 the ones that you want, just to +1 all men and all women and all people. And that just gets that energetic flow going so that you're actually alive and an invitation for it when it does arrive. So this is just a really beautiful way.
That's a great
point. I really love this distinction, and maybe you could say a little bit to this, Brian and Jennifer. As men, you know, you or we have a tendency to shut down +1ing or +anythinging in the day with anybody other than our partner. And if we do +1 or more than that, we feel guilty about it, which then shuts us down. And this is just a beautiful way to responsibly, consciously keep your sexual energy flowing and have you primed and ready and desiring your partner when that time arises in the day. Plus, just your overall energetic state gets heightened because you're not shutting that part of you down for fear of guilt or shame. I don't know if there's anything to say to that, but I'm just...
Yeah, I love that you're bringing that up, because it's really important that we said +1 and not even +2, you know, because a +1 to somebody that isn't your partner is not going to be, you know, making out, right?
Or any kind of sexual
it might literally just be eye contact. What if we just lingered eye contact just a second longer than you would normally? Or what if I just smiled just a little warmer than I would normally? Or what if I just moved closer and was a little more attentive than I would be normally? And
Jennifer,
it's these ideas that add to the interaction. Go ahead, Gabby.
I almost called you Genevieve there because you know I like to call you Genevieve. But I did this practice. I love this distinction. I'm going to apply it to other areas, but I first applied this in hugs.
Yeah.
So when someone would give me a hug, my type of hug was to wait until they went to release me and then squeeze them just 1 second longer. So if I just held on to them forever, that would be a little weird, you know. That +10 would be weird. But it's just that extra. They go to release, I go to squeeze, and one of my friends named it. They called it the clinger, because although he was the person, because he wanted to hug me back, so he just stayed hugging me.
Yeah.
And we just stayed hugging. I told him about the hug, and he's like, "Well, we might just need to hug all the way to dinner."
Well, that's the impact of it, Gabby. Exactly that. Like, you gave that person a little more energy, and he was like, "Oh, can we hug a little longer?" And then you go, "Oh, maybe I'll hug you a little longer." And that's how you get its beautiful cascade.
Yeah. And Brian, you said something just a few minutes ago when you said, you know, if they're neutral, you know, give them just a little bit. And being that this is, the as it starts and a bit of the seduction, I know it's different for everyone, so please check with your partner what actually is, what you think is sexy is not always what they think is sexy. But do you guys have any tips for those little bits that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. So, the first thing is, whatever you're doing, you're aware of your sexuality as you're doing it. So, you feel your cock, you feel your pussy, and I'll feel my cock. I'll feel that energy come right out of my cock into my hand, energize my hand, and then she goes to touch my face, let's say, and so that would be a neutral. So if I'm going to +1, I might do this. Go ahead, where I might just go and touch it, and then maybe across the lips. But it's not just my lips; it's my lips with my cock in them, right? And then eye contact. And it's a reward.
Early here. Feels pretty nice over there.
Really yummy. It's a reward. Totally yummy. It's a reward for her reaching towards me. It's a signaling to her body that it's on the right track. But it's also playing the game that she initiated versus like, oh, we're gonna kiss now, which would break the tension and not be the reward that she's looking for.
And what about if they're not initiating? Because you just showed where she touched you. What if you, as you said, not the controller, is there a term for the person that wants the sex all the time?
The non-control partner is what.
Non-control person. Okay. So from that perspective, the person isn't expressing any interest. Maybe they got kids and they've been working all day and just cooked dinner and they have no interest whatsoever. What does that husband do? Or could be the other way around. Could be the right question.
Well, not to contradict the show don't tell. I often will just speak a desire, especially at a time where I know it's not logistically possible to be having sex right then. But we'll be walking up the stairs 30 seconds away from going into a meeting, and I'll say, and she'll get to the top of the stairs, and I say, stop for a second. And she stops, and I lean up, and I go right and whisper in her ear, it's my deepest desire to just take you right now. And then we go. And so those little sparks just keep the fire.
Yeah, I know that we aren't going to do it, so even though he knows I'm not in the mood, I'm totally in my go mode. I'm about to present in front of these clients mode. But he's reminded me of his sexuality for a moment with no attachment, no clinginess, but he's added energy to that moment that what was going to be neutral.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I'm going to appreciate that. Every woman wants to be wanted. I may not want sex every moment that he does, but I definitely always want to be wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so a +1 from the non-control partner is to, in subtle, non-attached ways, let your partner know that she's wanted. Because then I'm guess what? I'm feeling a little sexier. And I go in there and I kill it because I've got more energy in my body, and I'm not going to give those people my sexuality necessarily, but I'm certainly going to give them that extra energy, and I'm going to funnel it towards what I want to funnel it towards. So I think that's a great example of what to do.
Yeah.
Remember, +1, not +10. So those +1s work.
Brian, I just want to, sweetie, just before we go on a new topic, because Brian said, not to contradict show, not tell, and I just wanted to tell you that what you demonstrated actually is showing. You used words, but it's still showing. You said, I leaned in and I whispered in her ear.
Sure.
You didn't say, I'm thinking of having sex with you right now. You said, stop.
That's right.
And it was the energy in the way you said stop. You were showing her something energetically. So, it's not to not use words, but, and anywhere you get close to my neck or ear is good in my world. It's like if Raj wants anything, the drive-by neck kiss is goes a long way.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Brian. Great minds think alike, Gabby.
Yay.
That is so not show, not tell. That is show, not tell.
Yeah. Not telling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's definitely showing, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
The other thing is, Gabby, you said, what do I do, since if she's not initiating? Jennifer is always initiating something, which might be, I'm headed out to go to a meeting outside, and she's giving me a goodbye kiss, which could be like the quality of like your second grade teacher kissing recess or something. It doesn't have to be sexy at all, but how do I +1 that? And so I might kiss and then just hold her and say, all right, now if we were to notch this up and make this just a little bit more sexy, how would that kiss look? Mm-hmm. And then she'll kiss me again more sexy, and I'm like, okay. And then I'll kiss her back a little more sexy. But again, +1, not +7.
Awesome. I'm going to make the join the Hangout button live now, and we'll see who jumps in. And we'd love to hear about your next tip while we're waiting for that. And people that do jump in, if you do, if you want to ask a question so that we know that you want to enter the conversation, just put it in the Hangout chat on the right side of the Hangout window. So we'll go ahead and refresh your page, and go ahead and click on that Join the Hangout button. If you're having any issues with that, shoot me a comment in the comment window on that page, and I'll make sure it's all working. So back to Brian and Jennifer.
Yeah, while we're waiting for any of you that might want to engage in a dialogue, and don't be shy if you want to add some of your own juice to the conversation, not just a question. We invite it all. But our third one is probably the most advanced. We saved it for last for a reason. And this one I call, archetypes, energy, and adjectives, right? And this is all about making the sex dirty by expanding your kind of behavioral flexibility and range in bed. And one of the things that I hear a lot, especially from men, but I hear it from both, which is that when the kind of sexual dynamic gets tired in a relationship, often I hear the man say, "Oh God, I just want a little variety. I just want, something a little different." And the energy is just stale. It's the same. We're having sex in the same way every night. We're initiating it in the same way every night. We end it in the same way every night. And there's this kind of formulaic thing that starts to happen when you're in a relationship after a while. And for that, I like to bring in archetypes, energies, and adjectives. And what this is you giving yourself permission to use things like becoming or role-playing an archetype, or often Brian and I will begin a sexual engagement, and I'll say, okay, Brian, give me 2 adjectives. Give me the 2 adjectives that would turn you on the most, that would bring the most energy into our dynamic. And he'll say what those are, and sometimes it's like soft surrender, sometimes it's like demon slut, sometimes it's playful, and I'll use those adjectives to become a woman who's the embodiment of those adjectives and bring her into the bedroom. So it's often like, he gets to be with me every night, but who I get to show up as using archetypes like the queen, the lover, the geisha, the fan. He's a DJ, and so sometimes I'll be the fan at the end of the concert, right? And so I'll play with these archetypes, I'll play with these energies, I'll play with these adjectives and become a different woman. And so he doesn't get stale. He gets to explore somebody new, somebody different. And some of them are great, and some of them are hilarious, and some of them go well, and some of them might not. But we're having a lot of fun on the way, and it's just about playing with that kind of variety that we all seek. We don't want the same thing every day, all day long. I mean, no matter how good a lover you are, if you only have one way of lovemaking, even if it's the best sex that person's ever had, if you've only got one channel, I guarantee you there'll be a point where that same level of turn on you had at the beginning will start to wane. Mm-hmm. And so we play with these. I'll say the energies, when I said, archetypes, energies and adjectives, is I'll say pick a chakra. Do you want root chakra sex? Like, to me, that's like a really primal, like base sex, like it's like we're animals, right? Or do you want like heart sex, where it's just like I'm just like whispering like love notes in his ear the entire time and just being like Aphrodite, falling in love? Or do you want like throat sex, which would be like me being really, really vocal, and screaming or moaning or just giving voice to everything going on, right? And we'll pick an energetic center and then make love from there. So those are...
Love that, Jennifer. Chakra sex. That's awesome.
Jennifer, could you just say a bit about the different chakras again? I'm just creating some comments.
Okay. So base, let's say your lover says, I want base chakra sex, the red chakra, which is down at the bottom. So that's where usually when he most wants me to want him in a really animalistic way.
Yeah, it's vital.
It's vital.
It's wild. It's creature sex.
Primitive almost, you know. You might be biting each other, You're definitely ripping clothes off, right? Yeah. That's like, it's primal, it's fast-paced, right? The center, your belly chakra, your orange chakra, that to me is instinctual. This is your kind of pleasure center. This is your intimacy, right? Your belly is where all of your sex organs meet. It's where your womb is. But it's like you're following the instincts of your body. So that's kind of belly sex. Your solar plexus is the yellow chakra, and that's like where it's really piercing, right? This is where I have an intention and I take him on an experience, on a ride. Yeah. And it's my ride. It would be the most dominant kind of sex, where if I'm giving it to him, I'm being dominant and it's my container, and here's where I'm taking us. And that's solar plexus sex, right? Then there's heart sex, which I already mentioned, where I'm just fully heart open. I'm whispering him love notes. I'm really ultra feminine.
It's like puppy love sex.
Yeah, and I'm even more surrendered, right? Throat sex I mentioned, right? This is where you're vocal and you're actually giving voice to what's happening. Third eye is your ajna, where your connection to your kind of visionary oracular wisdom, right? And here I turn into kind of a priestess energy, and I give him the kind of sex that's like our beings switching into one another and connecting and seeing each other as our highest selves. So if I'm seeing him as his highest self and he's seeing me as his, we're like coming together in that wise, beautiful, expansive. My energy is way big, way open, and so is his.
Like purification.
Yeah, exactly. And then crown chakra sex is like connection with the divine. I'm imagining that I am having a sexual engagement which is pulling both of us into our highest selves and channeling like who I see him to be, this king god figure. Like it's not even Jennifer having sex with Brian anymore. It's two people unified as God. Heroes Gamos, the divine feminine and the divine masculine coming together.
Yeah, but the crown chakra sex is some people talk about where it's not two people anymore. It's one
energy moving together.
Or one organism, and ego is completely dissolved. That's the more the crown.
So you can use things like this to be creative, right? So he would I would say, give me a chakra. And now I went from not really turned on. I'll do that sometimes when I know he wants sex and I can't really find it in me. But when I have that kind of assignment, if you will, I can play the character and the character gets me into the mood, even if I'm not in the mood. And so we'll use these adjectives, archetypes, and energies.
Especially as we begin, because then
it's at the beginning.
Once we are beginning, then the thing takes a life of its own. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I so love all these different things that you can play with.
Yeah. Also,
are you guys getting an echo right now, or is that just on?
No echo for me.
No,
okay.
I can turn this down.
Okay, it's not happening. Just. One more quick thing, Brian. It just, you talk about you don't always want to be with the same embodiment of person all the time. Yeah. This is such a simple way, and like to actually communicate what you would like, and then have your partner be able to play in that field.
And we've talked archetypes with you guys before, but not this energy and the adjectives. So you introduce this as one, archetype, energy, and adjectives, but there's a whole world in here. Hopefully we'll have you back. And just reminded me, Raj, maybe for how to keep the sex dirty before is to go through that archetype exercise they've taught us in the past.
Yeah.
Which has been huge. I talk about that all the time to people, and just how to stretch out of that conformity and try on these places that have you feel uncomfortable in the best way possible, so to speak. But this chakra sex, I'm like imagining like a picture of the chakra, like you click, it's let's decide, let's make the universe decide, and you hit the spinner. Oh, yeah. Oh, throat sex. Okay, let's get loud. If I can make it into a game here, I will.
Oh, I love it. You should, because this is all relationship fun and games. Then there's no pressure for the one picking, right? It's just like it's up to chance. You're going to like any of those forms of sex anyway. So that's a new ad, Gabby. I like that. We're going to try that. We've always let one of us pick.
What kind of sex does the universe say we should have, right?
Yeah.
So, when she normally will ask and lead the embodiment, because it's I don't know.
It's a particular genius.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful the way she does it, and I'm really thankful because I don't have to then like think a lot about how do I do this or whatever, because when she's occupying an energy, it's natural for me to occupy the opposite one. And I actually think the reason why we want variety isn't because we want to have a bunch of different tastes of different things. I think the reason we want variety in our sexual encounters is because we want to experience ourselves as a variety. And every time we're with that different type of energy or type of person or type of archetype or adjective, sometimes I might, when she asks, like, give me an adjective, I'll think of, like, what's my most ripe sexual fantasy? And it might, in that moment, be like, tentative and pliant.
Yeah.
The two adjectives that I want you to play with. And then she'll play with that, and then that causes me to be more directive, more forceful and dominant and confident, and I get to experience myself that way. And then, so if you're playing with these energies, then your sex gets to be the leading edge in your life of what you're exploring becoming, because it's so raw, it's so visceral and somatic. And then, out of the bedroom, it can spill into your life. We can start to actually embody that energy more naturally in your day-to-day life. But
oh, you have all those tools to bear. Just, I mean, in the business meeting where you need to bring some of that more directed energy. If you've played with it in the bedroom with the safety of your partner, now you're like, oh, I know what this energy feels like in my body. I know how to be her. You know, it's a tool that yields many fruits.
Yes.
And archetypes, again, if you should have us on the show again, we can go into that. It's a longer conversation, and we have a whole matrix of archetypes that we love sharing with people. And if we end up getting questions about it, we'll go into it. But it's really fun, because an archetype is like combining an energy with some adjectives and some ages and some setting and some set, you know, and you combine all of that in one more complex thing, and then you become that. And there are some specific ones that we like to recommend that people play with, but I think they're all fair game, and they're all going to bring variety into your sex life, and it's going to bring a lot more hotness.
I think that activity is so fun and interesting and hot that it wouldn't even be part of the show in the episode, that next time we're physically together, like literally just around the dining room table, which is how you introduced this conversation to us the first time, and just plop the camera up. And I think you even use sugar packets on the table to like lay it all out, and that would be fun. We'll do that sometime, recreate that. That would be a lot of fun, because it's a brilliant one, and has made a huge difference for Raj and I.
Awesome, you guys. We are approaching the close to our show today. So much valuable tips and tools today.
Yeah, I wish you were closer, honey.
I know.
Friday.
One of the things I just really love, again, is being able to explore your sexual desires in a conscious way that spirals up your sexual relationship with your partner, rather than, you know, clumsily tripping through your sexual desires, leading to, you know, an argument and separation with your partner. So can't wait to try these things out. Just a quick couple things before we end today. Join us next week for moving back into the fights clean area, where we'll be looking at how do you keep the fights clean during. You know, this is particularly useful during the holidays, because so many things come up for a variety of reasons. And if you can pull yourselves out of that nosedive of an argument, it can really save your holidays and special times with your family. Whereas otherwise, you can ruin a whole day and all the effort and you know, energy you've put into being together. Go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I call this, you know, unhooking in the heat of it. And in many ways, it's the most challenging of the 8 different topics we talk about of fights clean, sex dirty, before, as it starts, during, and after. I personally think it's the most difficult, because it's when you've literally lost your mind, you're triggered, you're really dealing with your emotions and concepts that you created when you were 4 or 5 years old, so you're not at your highest self, and it's very difficult at those times to unhook from whatever has got its grips in you. So we are really delighted to. It really comes down to building some muscle in this area, so that these things are a practice. And just like, you know, swinging a baseball bat, the first time you do that, you probably swung around in a circle. So it's about doing it again and again, and creating some habits, so that when you are in the heat of it, it's a lot easier to unhook from it. So we'll dive into that a bit more next week, or a lot more.
Awesome. And in the meantime, I'm getting that again. Gabby,
okay.
Yeah. In the meantime, you can check out our ebook, How to Keep the Fights Clean and the Sex Dirty: The 5 Simple Steps, where we look at these 5 steps, moving from admitting it and taking action all the way through to selecting solutions that really satisfy. And we put a lot of effort and energy into making this ebook a really fun read with actionable tips that you can apply immediately to your relationship. You can either check that out by going to the URL shown here, relationshipfunandgames.com/ebook, or just simply clicking on the sidebar.
And Raj, I also want to ask Brian and Jennifer, because I know, Jennifer, you've been, while your background has been in business in the last few years with Brian and consulting there, but you're starting to speak to women's empowerment and women's leadership, and you just participated in this beautiful book. When that book you did is just even touching it is a lovely, feminine, rich experience. So I don't know if you want to direct people to that book or to a talk, or how else can people find out more about what you're up to?
Oh, thank you for the invitation to mention that. Yeah, I'm, currently feeling really passionate and inspired to empower women to start seeing themselves as the Earth's visionaries. Inspiring women to burn their ivory towers of cynicism or resignation or even fear, and come out of those towers, plant their feet on the ground, and realize that we need you women to take the reins, to start becoming the leaders of our world. And I want women to be integrated, powerful leaders. And so if you're inspired by any of this and inspired by any of the range that we talked about, I've got this incredible little mini course. It's totally free. It's a way to get exposed to 4 ways to reclaiming your power. I'd be honored if you're wanting to kind of dive deeper into this. And in there, I teach you some of this work that I do with archetypal energies, and I teach you how to expand your kind of power and influence using archetypal energies. And so we'll go into some of that, and I'd be happy to have any of you do that. Brian and I also do a little bit of relationship coaching. It's rare.
Jennifer, how can people find that? Where should they go for your course?
Tell them to go to jennifersrussell.com, and you'll find it either on the opt-in, or you can find its own link on jennifersrussell.com/reclaim power.
Reclaim power. Awesome. Thank you so much. Raj, would you put that in the notes as well, so when people come, they can see that link at the bottom?
Yeah, I sure will. Yeah, so Jennifer /reclaim power.
Reclaim power, and that'll take you directly. You can get to it from my website, but that's a direct link.
Great, great. We are showing both Jennifer and Brian's websites here on screen. Brian, anything you want to say? Sounded like there's something.
Thank you so much for having us, and for diving into some of our topics, and peeking into our bedroom a little bit. Fun for us. I hope it was fun for you and fun for the listeners.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I was really looking forward to talking to you guys about this topic. I only wish I was in the same place with Raj so we could put this into place. I'm like, honey, I'm thinking of my adjectives.
We'll just keep the +1ing for the next couple of days, and when I come down to John's place there, we'll have to get a room or not.
Awesome. Well, to everyone out there listening, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really know that the world needs more love. The world needs a lot more love, and whether that is, removing the arguments so there's more affinity, or building the passion, what we're here to support you in is having a playful, peaceful, passionate P3 relationship. So thanks for coming tonight, and join us next week. And you have a few more weeks left of season 1. So if you want to check out any of the old episodes from last season, go to the website and check out the episode library before they're gone.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week, hopefully, at same relationship
we'll for sure
fun
be
and
here.
games
channel,
5:30 Pacific time next Wednesday. We'll be talking about how to keep the fights clean during. Lots of love to everybody, and thank you once again, Brian and Jennifer, for joining us today.
You're welcome. It was an honor. We had fun.
Bye-bye, everybody.